Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dan, and on today's episode of The Latest Bite, we're going to be talking about the latest scoop on artificial food coloring and why you should care and why you and your loved ones should avoid it. On today's breaking news, we have the FDA may outlaw food dyes within weeks. Bombshell move would affect candies, sodas, and cakes, and it would revolutionize American diets. The Food and Drug Administration will decide on a ban of certain food dyes in the next coming weeks after receiving a petition to review the safety of red number 3. According to the FDA, the agency has reviewed the safety of red number 3, which, by the way, is derived from petroleum. And I'm just going to ask you guys a question. When I say the word petroleum, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Hopefully, like me, the first thing that comes to mind is gasoline, diesel. And yes, the same thing that we put into our cars is the same thing that we put into our mouths on a day-to-day basis. The agency has reviewed the safety of red number 3 in food and drugs multiple times since it was first approved in 1969, but the petition has requested for the additive to be reviewed once more. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but I want you to remember the date, 1969. With the holiday season in full swing, where sweet treats are abundant, it is frightening that this chemical remains hidden in these foods that we and our children are eating, U.S. Representative Frank Pallone Jr. said. He argued that there is no reason for the additive to be in food except to entice and mislead customers to make products appear more appealing. And I'll be honest, he is 100% correct. There is no nutrition in artificial food colorings, yet alone petroleum. The only purpose of artificial food coloring is very simple. Just like he said, it's there to bring your attention to the product. But I'll take one step further. It's there to get the attention of your children. Children are much more susceptible to these brighter colors. It gets their attention, and within a few seconds, they're at your leg, tugging at your pants, saying, "Please, can I get this?" With that being said, where are the majority of artificial food colorings? They are in ultra-processed foods. Candies and chips and desserts, you name it. So the artificial food dye is basically the bait, while the sugar and all the other crap in these products are the hook. And that, my friends, are the simple equation on how to get a person to become a lifelong customer. Now here's something very interesting. While the FDA has stated that food dyes are safe and do not pose any health risks, the dye was banned from topical drugs and cosmetics in the 1990s. I wonder why it was banned in the 90s. Well, spoiler alert, they found out that by having red number 3 applied topically to rats, it increased their exposure and their chance of cancer. So you heard me right. Red number 3 is a carcinogen. When it's used topically, meaning in lipstick, in blush, in a lot of topical medications, it increases your risk of cancer. But don't worry, if you eat it, it negates all of those negative effects. Everything about this questions each layer of common sense. How can you approve a product, say you have no information, then you get information that it is a carcinogen, albeit applied topically, and you're still okay with it being eaten by millions and millions of people across the globe? Are you crazy? But I digress. Let's move on. All in all, this article is good news. We need to get more of the artificial food coloring out of our food supply. California, which is usually leading a lot of decisions into the wrong direction, have recently banned all of these artificial food colorings from their products. If one state can do it, if several countries can do it, why the hell can't we all do it? But you may be wondering, why should you care? Well, let's talk about that. The first thing to keep in mind is that according to the FDA, the use of artificial food coloring has increased over 5 times since the 1950s. Why is that important? It's important because of all the literature that has been developed since that time period. We have evidence connecting artificial food coloring to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We have the literature that connects artificial food coloring to neurobehavioral and developmental problems. We have the literature, like we just talked about, connecting artificial food coloring to cancer. Why are we playing the game of God? So we talked about red number 3, but there's a bunch more on the market. There's blue 1, blue 2, green 3. We talked about red 3. There's yellow 5, yellow 6, and red 40. What's the deal with those? Well, let's talk about that. Red number 40, yellow number 5, and yellow number 6 contain something called benzidine, a human and animal carcinogen that is permitted in low, presumably safe levels in dyes. The FDA calculated in 1985 that ingestion of free benzidine raises the cancer risk to just under the concern threshold. This is just pissing me off even reading this. There should be no concern threshold. If there is even a sliver of a doubt, why are we putting millions of people at risk? Just someone make sense of this. Bound benzidine also has been detected in dyes in much greater amounts than free benzidine, but routine FDA tests measure only free contaminants, overlooking the bound version. So we could be exposed to vastly greater amounts of carcinogens than the FDA's routine tests indicate. So not only is the FDA okay with a little bit of a cancer risk, but they're not even getting the full picture. And to make matters worse, this threshold and this analysis was done and set over 40 years ago. Times have changed, the amount of products on the market have changed, the amount of artificial food coloring has quintupled. Guys, it's time to renew our thinking, don't you think? Now, you may see that blue 1 and 2 are not on this list. Does that make it okay? Absolutely not. In other words, what happened with blue 1 and blue 2 is actually something really interesting if you happen to be a science nerd like I am. Blue 1 and blue 2, when it's in our body, it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. And when it crosses the blood-brain barrier, it does something very interesting, but also incredibly alarming. It increases the amount of heavy metals in our brain. So think about that. When we talk about neurodevelopmental delays, we talk about behavioral change, don't you think that could be one of the components? So we've discussed all the ones that are currently on the market and all of the different problems they all bring, the baggage. But what about all the other colors that have been banned since the 1950s? What's further fascinating about artificial food coloring is that yes, we have a few approved on the market right now, but there used to be many, many more. So since the 50s, so many different ones have been banned, and we still have not learned from our mistakes. Why are we trying to make this product work? Why are we trying to take something that we know causes organ damage and cancer, and we're just trying to change it just slightly enough to make it work? I don't know. If you have the answer, let me know in the comments down below. And if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to subscribe. But I found a really interesting PDF that talks about why all the other colors were banned. Let's check it out. So the banned dyes include green number 1, liver cancer, orange number 1, and orange number 2, organ damage. Orange B was supposed to be banned but was never finalized, but contained low levels of a cancer-causing contaminant. Red number 1, liver cancer. Red number 2, possible carcinogen. Red number 4, high levels damage adrenal cortex of dogs. Red number 32, damages internal organs and may be a weak carcinogen. Since 1956, it continues to be used as citrus red number 2, only to color oranges. We can't even trust oranges on the market anymore. Sedan number 1, toxic and carcinogenic. Violet number 1, cancer. Yellow 1 and yellow 2, high dosages cause intestinal lesions. Yellow 3, high dosages cause heart damage. Yellow 4, high dosages cause heart damage. I mean, this is insane. Why do we have to continue making crap from the original crap? Don't you think we have so many beautiful vegetables and fruits to use for food coloring? I mean, hell, I opened up one pomegranate and my countertop, it's still stained red. Imagine just a few of those seeds to color the cereals instead of this crap. Now, before I give myself some heart damage, there is something I do want to bring to light. And of course, correlation does not equal causation. But sometimes when all the puzzle pieces fit together, it can't just be a coincidence. And I want to talk about pediatric cancer. Since 1975, there has been a 33% increase in childhood cancer. 43 unfortunate children are diagnosed every day, with 16,000 kids diagnosed every year. You may be asking yourself, what happened in 1975 to get these incredibly depressing statistics? And truthfully, there is no right answer, but there's a few things I want to share with you so you are now well informed in what happened during that time frame. In 1969, we talked about this. Red dye number 3 was approved. In 1970, the first food pyramid was revealed, and that is when all the nutritional agencies got together and said, guys, stop what you're doing, and we need to focus on grains and carbohydrates and starches as our main sources of energy. Not only then, that is when Harvard released a paper demonizing saturated fats. Saturated fats became the problem while we shifted to sugar. When you put all of these things together, it's not that complicated to connect the dots and see why our children are sicker than they ever been. And to close out today's discussion, there's one more thing that happened in the 70s that is affecting all of us today. In 1970, Monsanto has revolutionized Roundup, and the introduction of glyphosate to the air, to the water, and to the land has taken over. And if you haven't heard about glyphosate, keep this in mind. Immunotoxic, neurotoxic, genotoxic, and carcinogenic. And it's in everything we eat and we breathe. I know that correlation does not equal causation, but sometimes the simple answer is the answer after all. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of The Latest Bite. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell so you can be the first one notified when I drop another episode of The Latest Bite. With that being said, have a fantastic night and drop any ideas or articles to review down in the comments down below.